cold.
Sorry, you were saying you've been feeling a bit under the weather.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. I think it's just like I did a long session yesterday and I didn't get to eat for 10 hours and I was dehydrated. So I think it's more just my body's like, kind of like please put me back to normal. But I think if I don't rectify it, I'll definitely get sick. So yeah, I'm kind of
I,
feeling you now.
I hate that. I hate it when you can feel it coming, and you're like, oh, I've got this to do. I've got this to do. I just don't have time to be ill, and there's like you sort of start getting all kind of quite pagan about it. You start thinking, oh, well, maybe if I take my clothes off and kind of go dance in the woods at night, then maybe I'll be
Just need
okay.
to hug a tree. Let me just hug a tree and it'll make me better.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
it's dead nice to speak. I've been listening to your EP loads
Oh, thank you.
past couple of days. What's it like being in a band called Holy Wars when there is literally a holy war going on right now?
I will say it's such a conflicting feeling because, why I named this project is it because of an internal experience that I saw how religion destroyed my family. I also grew up in this like Catholic dominant, but my mom was a tarot card reader. So like I had this push and pull of what is life? What are we? Like existential dread. But when
Well,
there is
what,
actual holy war existing right now, it's not lightly. I don't take that lightly. Like I feel like it's just so strange. I don't want us to represent the turmoil and the suffering that's happening, because our name is could make somebody think of that, and that's the downfall I feel of having this name, even though when we ignited this project, it was like we weren't even thinking that. So
yeah,
it's
of course. I interviewed a musician called Lana Lubani for the podcast earlier this year. She made a great record called The Holy Land, and she's Palestinian, and it felt a little bit. I don't know. It felt almost a little bit provocative. It was. It's a weird thing in it because you want music to be filled with things that are real, but at the same time, there's real and there's real. You know what I mean?
And then there's just heartbreaking and the reality of the state of our world. I mean, even going back to the Holy Crusades, long before we've ever even we existed. But there's always turmoil in this world, and it's just a shame. But for our band personally, we actually get a lot more Megadeth fans confusing us or confusing the name.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna say today when I went, I said to Alexa, I've got an Alexa in the house, so when I
yeah.
said I said Alexa, play Holy Wars, and obviously it played Megadeth, so that was
Yeah, that's been quite a thing. I mean, we knew that that could be a possibility, even though we didn't name the project after Megadeth. Of course, we were very much aware of that song. It's like the biggest song. But,
yeah, yeah.
I guess I just, when we started this project back in 2017, I was maybe a little naive to think that fans of that band can separate the two. But we get our share of people that think they're being super original by like commenting on our page, like, and the punishment due. I'm just like, yes, yep, you found us out. But sometimes they think we're a cover band. I definitely have the same hair color right now as Dave Mustaine.
Yeah,
So
there is a bit of a Dave Mustaine going on there, actually.
yeah, I'm definitely not helping my case, that's for sure. But I still feel like the music will always stand for itself, and regardless of the name. I mean, think about how many bands. I mean, taking the actual Holy War, that is like that's in its own category, and I will never say like anything about that because that deserves all the attention and the education there. But when it comes to fans of another band that happens to have a very popular song, I kind of had to let that roll off my back because it's just like it's not even about us or our music in that aspect. It's about we are possibly threatening something that they know that they hold very dear, and if we are presenting ourselves as something and it's not what they were hoping we would be, then they're heartbroken, or they think they're funny and being clever by like telling me something I don't already know, you know? So I
Yeah,
have to take that with a grain of salt, you
yeah.
know?
I feel like if they're heartbroken, they should probably go touch grass. Really, do you know what I mean? It's
Well, it's
like
like that song exists. There's thousands of videos about that song. They can see it live. Megadeth is still performing. So like
it's
you
all
have
good.
that.
Yeah,
Like go find that, you know, but I think it could be misogynistic too. Like people just don't want to see a female voice in that genre, maybe. I mean, not all of them. I think we get way more love than we do get. But when I have to think about anybody that's coming forth and trying to compare us to that, it's not even like a real comment to me. It's like that person does, they're not even a real person in my opinion. Like I'm like, you're just like an internet glitch in my
yeah.
opinion.
There's never been a time. There's never been a time since the moment they turned the internet on that separating the internet from reality has been more important than the present moment. I don't think. But enough of that. Enough of that. What I would really like to talk to you about. I had some stuff I wanted to talk to you about, but
Yeah.
you mentioned religion, and I'm a bit of a geek about religion. Very
Yeah.
interested in spirituality and things like that. So you said this thing about you had spent some time trying to work out what it was all about, almost like what God, what religion was all about. And when you were
Yeah.
saying that, what I wanted to ask you was, what did you arrive at?
I wish I had an answer. Honestly, I feel like as I've been getting older in my life, I went through a pretty tragic loss in 2015. I lost my parents at the same time, like 6 months apart. And that I feel like when you go through something, whether it's your own life and death, or you lose what you defined as your shelter, your home, like your ground base, you know, that where you've learned about life. And, you know, like a lot of us, we get our religion from our parents or our political views, you know. So when that kind of happened at a quite a young age for me, I just was like, what is all of this? Like, what am even I? Like, and you start to look at your own existence and question your place in this infinite universe where we are less than a grain of sand. So I feel like I do believe, like I'm very spiritual, but I do have this confliction with my brain where I have that scientific mind and then I have that belief faith-based mind, and it's always at battle. So I wish I could have like an actual answer for you. I do, for me personally, comforting, I would like to believe that there is some form of existence after we perish in this world, because what the fuck is the point? Like it's super nihilistic to think like there is no point to any of this, you know? And it's heartbreaking, but it's also freedom in that way where like any problem I look at in this very macro lens, and when you expand out of that and you realize that we're in this infinite universe with so many unanswered questions, and even religion likes to say they know, but we don't really know. We just hope or we believe. Then you have freedom of like, there is no point to any of this. So I have that I hope that answers your question. I have this conflicting feeling about it at all times. So the
Yeah,
hope for is existing in me always.
yeah. I talk about this on the podcast all the time, but I have OCD, and when I was a teenager, when it first became a real problem, a lot of it was about almost existentialism. Like it was about God. Like I was always secular. I mean, I went to Sunday school when I was a kid, but I was never raised in a particularly religious way. And you know, I didn't. My parents weren't. My dad was Catholic, but he wasn't practicing. And I, but I always believed in God. I always just kind of looked at the world and thought, "There's no way this isn't by design." I just believed that, and because of that, I always felt like God was kind of there or thereabouts, but I never really felt it. I never really felt God was in any way interventionist because I always knew that evil existed in the world, like the Holocaust or
Oh yeah.
what happened in Croatia and Serbia and what happened in Rwanda. All these like you know my my teenage years were peppered with these horrendous stories on the news, and I just thought, well, almost like if you're supposed to pray to that God, then I just refuse to pray to that God, you know. But the fact that I did believe in God, I just thought it was almost God was like above the pay grade of humans, but just existence and consciousness had to have some kind of design. And then
Yeah.
one day when I was at university, I just stopped believing that. when I was 19 away from home. I just stopped believing that, and that was my OCD, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and kind of sent myself mad actually for about a year. It was a bad scene. And now I've sort of arrived at a bit of a place where I am totally okay with not knowing. Like, I'm totally okay with not understanding the mysteries of of existence. But every time I speak to someone, and the majority of times I speak to someone is when I speak to someone on my podcast, I'm always
Yeah.
hoping they're just going to say something and explain
Yeah.
it all to me, which is a lot of pressure. Which is a lot of pressure for a rock band.
Yeah, I mean, and especially a band called Holy Wars. I wish I could give you. Yeah, I
But
feel
your
like
music's quite. I mean, even I don't really like referencing press releases on the podcast because I always think, well, the listener hasn't
yeah,
read it. But your press release is quite heavy. It's talking in there about almost like the monster within. It's talking about
yeah.
ego. It's talking about all sorts of weighty stuff. So I guess the kind of question, almost like this conversation, isn't too far out of the orbit of what I imagine you'd be interested in.
Oh, 100% I am. I just wish I could have like a finite point to it all. Like I do think religion is helpful in many ways. Like if we were a like if there was absolutely no faith or no anything, I don't know what type of society we would be, or like even an order. Like, and in this, I'm just only speaking on Christianity. Like I can't really comment on other religions that I wasn't raised with or haven't educated myself with. But they're all kind of like placing society in a certain type of order as well, because there would just be complete chaos. And the one thing that us as humans, our egos, we can't handle the thought is our own non-existence, so we create a heaven and a hell. So we have some comfort that we are going to be somewhere in an afterlife. And then with that heaven hell polarizing, it keeps us in order. Yeah, beyond jail, beyond prison. Like if you do this, you'll go to jail. It's literally like you will spend eternity in damnation if you are not a good person and using your moral compass.
Pardon me.
So there's a lot of benefit to religion. There's a lot of power though, and money in religion. There's a lot of war and suffering and raping and just like this barbaric, what is happening literally. And it's unfortunate that like something that could be so great that it does have this really dark side. And I look at this world as we're kind of, it's hell on earth as well. So the hell in the mind too, to go back to the press release, I also believe heaven and hell is a state of your own mind and how you can navigate through this world through your own healing, learning, processing, and trying to be the best human you can for your own mental health, for the way you are with other people, how you see yourself through other people's eyes. That's another thing that we struggle with as humans, and social media is really making it worse, like comparing yourself to other people that you would never even have the privilege to see what they were doing back in 1995. But now they're your neighbor, they're in your face, and they're having a better life than you, or and it's just, and that's why my music today lyrically is about these things, because I'm constantly thinking about it, just like you. I wouldn't say I would never say I was CD because I would never want to say that, but I've spiraled completely, and the only way I can heal this in myself is through music, and that's kind of what this project's always been, and hopefully it'll find the right audience that needs to hear it too.
Well, it feels like you've already cultivated, quite an audience. Do you?
Yeah.
I mean, what I thought was the difference between this EP and the last record was that, well, I felt like it was more eclectic. Like I felt like there was more travailing of genre, and I also thought that it had more kind of girth to it. Like I felt like it was. I don't want to say
Yeah.
heavy. I don't want to say heavier because what does that even mean? But I felt like it was more. It had more of a snarl to it.
Yes. Yeah. And we intentionally so, that was also not just because of like what we wanted the feeling to be, but also when we started touring, which was in 2021. And and we were a band obviously since 2017, but we've only really done like the local Los Angeles circuit here. And we took some time off because after my first EP that was dedicated to the death of about grief and losing my parents, I didn't know what I would say next that was as important or felt as authentic, you know? So, and I'm not the type of person that can just create music about a love song or going out on a Friday night. Like there's way more other artists that do it and do it well, but that's clearly not my purpose. So I really am like, it has to be coming from where I'm at in my life, how I'm feeling, and what message I want to put out. Because I also think that's powerful when you are a person that's creating something. What you create has an impact, however small or big. So I always try to hold myself to that standard as well. But when it came to performing, we really got to see live across just domestically in the States how fans were responding to us. And we were always opening. So we haven't done a headline tour just yet, though we've headlined in LA, but we haven't actually gone off of the comfort of our own home, you know? And while we were the support for these headliners, and mostly what was their fans checked out our music, came early to see us, and we would do like a free meet and greet after our show every time. And across every tour we've done from 2021 to 2023, festivals as well that we've done this year, every fan has said the same thing. Like, I checked out your music, I liked it, I was interested to see your live show, but man, live, you guys are so much heavier, you're aggressive, energetic, and your pre-recorded music didn't really reflect that. And if only I had known like this is the type of artist I was about to witness, I would have been a bigger fan of you a lot earlier on. And we started to realize like, why is there a disconnect? And we do play a lot more aggressive, and the emotion is so raw when we play live that every night it's like the last night of our lives. Like we don't ever phone in a show. It's the most energetic. I'm in the crowd, you know, it's like a community. So going heavier or snarly with the new music was also to figure out how can we bridge that gap, because we don't plan on stopping live and we love touring and that's always been the best way that we can, you know, kind of create a family, like that in-person connection that you just can't get on the internet. So that's also another reason for it, you know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think reality is totally due a comeback. You've mentioned your parents a couple of times now. My dad passed away last year, so I'm on the grief train with you.
Yeah, I
Uh,
feel sorry.
where are you at with it?
You know, it's funny. I just had this conversation with Nick. It was in Holy Wars, my other half in Holy Wars. You know, they passed in 2015, right? And that was 2 years before the project started. And I thought 2017, and I healed it. I went through it. But I feel like you're always going through it. And I would never want to say something and you know, because you are in it, you know, you're in a year of it. And but I don't think you ever really move on from it. Like you get into your life and you learn to live with that emptiness in your heart. You know, you learn to live with the loss, and you get more used to them not being around. But yeah, I feel lonely without them. I feel like if I have a great day or a bad day, they're the first people I think of that I want to call, and I can't. I had a birthday recently and I was crying in the bathroom, or I'm sorry, in the kitchen. And I was like, why am I crying? And I think it was just all the buildup of not dealing with the grief as much as I should have during the time of grieving, because I distracted myself with music and performing. And while I convinced myself I was healing that way, I think I was numbing it. And then it will always come up. What you don't deal with, it will find a way to creep up. So I think, you know, to answer your question, I don't know if I've actually dealt with it. And I'm now having to reprogram myself and give myself space and time to actually heal. And so I think I'm talking about them a lot more now than I even have been in the last years, you know?
Yeah, I think that can be. Yeah, I think we just feel this now. Like, I don't think it goes. I don't think there's a day where we go, yeah, it's all right now. You know,
Yeah.
I just think this is
Yeah.
we've kind of changed shape, you know, and it's about
Perfect
just,
way to say it. Yeah.
yeah. I've made this all very grim, haven't I? No,
No, I love this talk. And believe it or not, like, people, I think they need to hear it, because when I went through it, and even today, a lot of my friends haven't lost their parents yet, so nobody really could relate to that. And from what I understand, I say it's a club you never want to join, but we all eventually do. And then there's the opposite of that, to be more grim, where, losing, God forbid, a child is even worse, um, but it needs to be talked about. I think people are so afraid to talk about the things that are heavy, and but like when you don't talk about it, you just start numbing yourself or you medicate yourself. And again, like I said, you're just putting a band-aid on it. You're not actually dealing with it, and it will creep up eventually. So I always welcome this kind of talk. I actually think it's way more real than like, how you doing? And you say, I'm good, even though you're like, am I good? I haven't actually been with myself to figure that out.
yeah, it's weird. Because of the OCD, I think often kind of people I know have seen me as little bit intense, and maybe less so now. But because I think when you get older, everyone gets a bit more kind of deep and heavy. But because my OCD was so extreme when I was young, that I think that I sort of had to learn how to be fun. I sort of had to learn to like almost compartmentalize the horrors that were going on in my head, and when I went to parties, learn how to make jokes. So there's always that thing when someone goes, "How are you?" and you go, "Yeah, I'm all right," but actually in your head you're like, "Please take me for a coffee, and I'll tell you exactly how I'm doing." But you don't want to ruin
Exactly.
people's days. When are you going to come to the UK? I would
Oh
really
my
like to
gosh,
see. I would really like to see you play these songs live and talk more
we
about
will.
dead parents.
We will. And honestly, like the UK has been so welcoming to us. And, we just got on with Body Temple, but again with Cult Classic on, the BBC Radio 1 with Daniel P. Carter. And, we feel so embraced by you all. So we definitely want to come out there. And we get that question often. Like I'll get my DMs and they're like, when are you coming to Europe, or when are you coming to the UK? And or even Brazil, we do have a booking agent that's international and a pretty good one too. We had an opportunity to maybe go out there, but it was for like unfortunately, like it was a small opportunity that it would have been great if it was easy to get to, but with visas and, work visas and all that, you really have to find the right moment. So we're really hoping that next year there's going to be a great tour that we can make that happen. And then we'll do a few headline shows off of that tour, maybe, just to, like say we're on a tour with an artist that has like a bigger ticket or something, like then we want to make sure that we have the accessibility for our fans that want to see us with a price that they can deal with. So we're in the works, but I wish I could tell you that we have concrete dates yet, but we do not yet, but it's going to happen.
I think it's a bit of an indictment of where music finds itself in the. I mean, when I started this podcast, it very much was because I used to be staff on music magazines, and I wasn't staff on any music magazine anymore. And I wanted to be part of the conversation with music. And a lot of the conversations I have to say that I have on this podcast with musicians are about how the industry is so broken, like the economics of it are so broken.
Yeah.
And I don't mind having those conversations because I think they need to be had. And I am hopeful that at some point we do. I think people are always going to make music. It's just we are in an extraordinary time of change, and I think that there are things that need to be worked out. But one thing that I have noticed is that I have these conversations with people on the podcast, and when I would have had them for a magazine, maybe like half a decade ago or more, and I would have said to a band in the States like yourselves who had an audience and had a number of releases out, and I would have said, "Oh, when are you coming to the UK?" And the answer would have been like, "Oh, it's next year. Like we've got it in the diary." But it feels like increasingly it's getting harder and harder for US bands to actually kind of have, unless they're of a really significant size, to kind of have that plotted out. And I guess the question is I know this project revolves around the two of you, but is it? I don't know. How do you find the practicalities of making music away from the art, like actually running it as something which is sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, we found our own way of doing it that benefits us so we could be a full-time musician. And that's mainly like we have our project and, we have the label support. We have a full team that is like, we're all working to like keep pushing it up the hill. But we actually write music for other genres. We write music for film and TV. So
Did
we're
not
always,
know that.
yeah, we do. And Nick and I, he does it as well, or he produces other artists too. And some you've heard of, some you haven't. But we always have a way to keep us like creatively fed, keep us literally physically fed, you know. And I'm just so happy that in this case where Holy Wars has always been an artist project and we never think about like even TikTok, like is this song going to hit on TikTok, which is what we've become in our, I call it not the music industry but the internet industry. So you know, that gets to be what it gets to be, and we get to grow and learn, and we get to learn about ourselves in that music. We get to learn about the fans, like who we're attracting, and you know, some things we're like, yeah, I wouldn't write that song again, but but it's there for the person that needs
Yeah.
but we have all this other music that also fuels us, and that's possibly also why you hear an eclectic sound with Holy Wars, even because we don't just like one type of music. And I think, you know, fans of music as a whole, as generations are coming up, they're a little bit more open
Oh,
to
totally. Yeah, yeah.
different styles. So it's a great time and a horrible time for music. A lot of the
Yeah.
older fan base, I'm noticing they don't really like if you're, and I'm not saying everybody, of course, like it's a smaller percentage, but you could tell that there's a fan base that's a bit older that grew up with, say, metal. And when they have a hip hop artist now trying to invade their community of music, it's not very well received. But I'm a person that actually loves that. I think it's so creative to take all these. I mean, music as a whole has always been about blurring up genres, like going all the way back, you know, rock and roll's beginning. So I don't know. It's a great time, but it's also, like you said, to find the resources to make money as an artist. It's not there like it used to be, say, when you were a band in the 90s and you had the label support and you were making money from your tours and your merch. And it's a little different, you know.
There we go. It's got depressing again, hasn't it? Let's end this with something positive.
Okay, yeah. Well,
No, it's fine because that was your turn to make it depressing. I did it before. We're 1-1. We're 1-1. How?
I just be real. I'm sorry. It's like
No, 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 no. To be honest, I actually feel quite hopeful about it. You know, I
yeah,
feel, you know, I think music's always brilliant. I think there's always amazing music out there. Like I just think humans. I just think music remains the most visceral, intimate way of expressing emotions. Like I truly believe that,
yeah,
and I think people haven't stopped being able to make amazing music. I was just talking to a friend, another music journalist friend of mine, and he said to me, "What's your album of the year?" And I haven't even thought about it yet, really. But I rattled off 20 records where I was like, "I love this. I love these records." And I said, "What about you?" And he rattled off, you know, another 20, and there was probably 10 in there I hadn't heard. So that's amazing, right? But it's
yeah,
just, for me, a lot of it's about sort of like an attention economy. You know, for, like music was, when I was growing up, and I maybe presume the same of you, music was, it was everything. And now it's just another thing. And I don't think that's actually the case for everyone. But I actually
yeah,
think that us within music have to do some work in almost sort of promoting the value of music. You know, I feel like the world is better when there is more music. The world is better when music is more important than just what flies on TikTok. You know, I think that it has to have depth
yeah.
and meaning, and I don't quite know how to do that, but you know, that's why I do a
I,
podcast. You know,
you're saying everything that I'm actually even like thinking about today, you know, how I feel about music as a listener, as a creator of it. Like I was saying earlier about the message I want to put out there. And, you know, I'm also a filmmaker. I love film. So I like the cheeky side of things. I love juxtaposition. I like when like that's why you'll have like an album, Eat It Up, Spit It Out, which is very about like political stuff, society, you know, all of it. But I don't want to just like depress everybody. But it's like, how can I say this in a way that is entertaining you? Maybe you'll feel like a badass listening to it. But after a few times of spinning the record, you might be like, wait, what are they saying? I want to like question things. And I feel like that's the rawness and the depth is question. I mean, that's what makes like, or like back to religion, you know, like if I was a priest, I would welcome people to question the religion I am, the words I'm telling them, because you just don't want a society of sheep, or maybe they do, but you know,
Yeah,
you,
I think maybe they do I don't, I was reading about this the other day actually. I think I maybe heard it on a podcast, but there was someone talking about, there was someone, I can't remember who it was, but there was someone that was talking about where the Catholic Church went wrong. And they were basically saying up to a point that priests weren't what they became. That they weren't people who wanted to control their flock. They were people who, you know, they were like the cleverest people in the village. They were the cleverest people in the town. They were the most well read, right? In many cases, they were just the only ones who could read. And the church, therefore, had a much more positive impact on people. And I think apparently the argument is when the Black Death, when the plague came along and it killed so many people, you got people who maybe weren't fit to be priests becoming priests, because the priests were like the first people who died during the plague, because they were the people who'd go out to people who were dying of the plague and give them the last rites. So almost from that point, that was the decline in the Catholic Church. But actually, going back to the beginning, they were more what you would say. They were people to really respect within a society.
yeah.
I don't think that's very depressing. I don't think I've made it depressing.
No, that to me is educational. Like you're feeding me right now.
Yeah, I mean, it could all be bollocks. I haven't sense checked it, but it sort of makes sense to me. I think, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, like humans as a whole, like we're just imperfect animals. And we have this consciousness, we have this ego that is like, I mean, that's it, like in Deus Ex Machina, that's literally what I'm talking about. Like the God, like I know it translates God from the machine, and the actual meaning of what that is like usually would come and save the day. But in my story, there was nothing to save the day, because you are the one that needs to save yourself, you know? So there is no like God that like comes into like a plot and fixes your problem, like Cinderella, you know, like the godmother that's like, I'm gonna make you a princess overnight, you know. But the God from the machine is like the ego, the brain controlling us. So I feel like religion, society, community, music, all of it, we're just such like incredibly faceted people, or animals. I keep saying animals because that's what we are. I don't know. I wish I could say like we're gonna all have a happy ending, but we're just always a work in progress, you know?
Yeah, it's funny actually. I was saying that about sort of the existentialism stuff when I was younger, and last night I woke up in the middle of the night, I think because I've got a bit of a cold and I wasn't sleeping very well. My wife's away, and I go feral when my wife's not around. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I was just doom scrolling. I was just looking through Twitter, and there was an account I follow that posts I don't want to say sort of like alternative takes, but sort of different perspectives on weather. And they were talking about how at various points in history the poles switch, and that creates a number of natural disasters. And some people believe that happens every 6,000 years. And I don't know enough about archaeology, but I've sort of watched a few documentaries recently about the idea that civilization starts over and it ends and it starts over. And it was the middle of the night, and I was just going, how am I going to get back to sleep now? How am I going to do it? How am I going to do a podcast tomorrow? How am I going to write an article?
Ireland.
Like, what's the point, you know? But I just think there's more to it all. I don't know whether it's aliens. I don't know whether it's consciousness. I don't know. I just think there is a point to all this. So
I agree with you. Yeah, I really do. And, you know, like aliens is a great topic, because now, you know, in States, they're like, oh, here's aliens now. We're finally confirming, even though it was so like, yeah, no, of course. Yeah. But then now people are like, what are you now not telling us about something else? Because if you're giving us aliens, what are you hiding? But the truth of the matter for me, you know, is like, there's no way we're the only life in this vast universe. Like that is the most arrogant thing that we as humans can think, you know, like, I don't know what is out there, but to think that we are the only things that doesn't sit right with me. So same with like consciousness, or like, or even like having a family, you know, your dad, like thinking like I'll never see him again. That doesn't sit right with me either. Like, why do we have love? Why do we have these strong bonds and emotions? And like, if we really are just like little tadpoles that came from the ocean, turn into humans, we go back to the, and we're dust. It's just so depressing.
Yeah,
So
that just can't be. I almost feel like that's. I don't want to get too sort of conspiratorial about it, but I almost feel like that's something that it's almost like, is that told to us to pacify us? Because I just,
yeah, maybe.
you know, I don't really like getting like that, right? Because I think the world could do with a little bit less conspiracy right now. But
Yeah.
I've just felt things in my life that I just think, you know, I get it's all chemicals swirling around inside of us. I get that that's what, you know, even love, right? That's what it is. You know, it's a chemical reaction inside you, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have meaning. It's really weird with
Yeah.
my dad. I'm really interested in ghosts.
Mm,
I don't know whether I believe, but I am interested in it. And
yeah.
I used to talk about it so much when I was younger that I said to my dad, like one day, he was quite an irritable man. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, well, when I'm not here, I'm going to come back and haunt you." And he hasn't done it. He hasn't turned up. And part of me goes, well, the thing with my dad is he wouldn't turn up. Like he would just be doing it to piss me off. Like he'd be like, "Oh, I'll keep him waiting." But then there's another part of me that's like, "Come on, man, you know, you promised, you know." Anyway,
Make me believe officially.
uh,
Yeah.
I, I feel like we could talk. I feel like we could talk for a long time, Kat. Uh, but
Yeah.
but my eyes are all over the place because I feel full of cold. Um, let me know when you come to the UK. I would love to come and see you play. And
Yeah.
why don't we end this by you telling me what your favourite horror movie is? Because there's a bit of a that there is a vibe of that throughout this EP.
Yes. So Nick is definitely the horror buff. He can whip up like 10 off the top of his head, and some like real like B movie ones too. My favorite, and I don't look at it as horror, but a horror is a Suspiria.
Oh, I
And I
like that.
don't, yeah, like if it's, I mean, it's horror, of course. It's
Yeah, yeah,
terrifying,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know. I don't feel like there's some genres of horror. Like I've never seen Saw. I don't like gory, you know, like I don't like to, like, I don't want to feel, I don't know. I'm not into
Well,
that.
tell me what, because I am a horror geek. So you tell me what your vibe is, what you would like, and I'll recommend something to you.
I do like psychological, but I like haunts and ghosts. You know, it's fascinating to me. That actually could scare me because, like, yeah, when you turn off the lights at night and you're going to bed, I'm like, did I just see something? Did I just hear something? I like more of that. But yeah, if I had to pick my favorite, it's Suspiria. I love the old one. I love the remake. Yeah, I love.
I went to a playback of of the Suspiria soundtrack for the new one that Tom York from Radiohead did, and
Yes.
it was a haunted prison in London, and they played it in the dark, and it was one of the most remarkable things I think I've ever experienced.
That's
Just
amazing.
just sat there in the dark in a haunted prison while there's crazy tribal drums going on and screeching and the odd
Yeah.
little lick of beauty. What I'm going to recommend to you, there's a movie called Lake Mungo. Have you ever heard of
Like,
Lake Mungo?
no, I haven't.
It's an Australian movie. It's
Okay.
Australian. It's like a found footage movie. It's sort of presented almost like a sort of like a documentary, and it's about it's about a young woman who's died, and there's a lot in there about grief within a family and kind of belief and wanting to believe, but it's really scary as well. But it's not like there's no jump scares, there's no,
Yeah.
you know, there's no gore at all, I don't think. But it's the movie that I always come back to and go, that's a scary movie, you know, but
Yeah.
also, you know, also very thoughtful. So
I love that. Yeah. If it like makes me feel something on the inside, that's not just like, I welcome that. Cause yeah, it's, I don't know, it makes me feel tingly or something, you know?
amazing.
Um, I remember it, I was obsessed with clowns growing up, and I never watched it as a kid. My parents just didn't let me, but when I hit, it was like third grade, I think, or fourth grade, I would try to have like sleepovers, and no friends would want to like sleep over in my room because it was just completely covered in clowns and porcelain clowns too, you know, like creepy looking clowns. And I remember finally, I was just a little bit older and I watched it, you know, when my parents weren't around, and I was like, this is hilarious. Like this clown is not scary
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. I don't
Maybe the
really,
new Pennywise is, but you know, so
I don't,
I was it too because I think it's hilarious.
I don't really get the clown thing. I like, my wife, if she sees a clown, she'll be like, ugh. And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like if you were going to do a top 10 things to be scared of, I don't think clowns would be in that top 10. Like, I get why they're scary because they're for kids and they're kind of unsettling, and we have
Yeah.
this desire to protect kids and stuff. But I always just go, oh, just wash their face, and they're just like you or me. Do you know what I mean? But Kat,
Yeah.
it's been so nice to speak to you. Like I say, I feel like we could go forever on this, but I really need to go blow my nose.
Please
Um,
rest. I hope you feel better.
thank you for the chat, and I hope our paths cross again sometime.
Yes, in person on your side of the world.
Amazing, fingers crossed. Take care. Bye, bye, bye.